Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming out for another episode of TJump Talk. It's been a minute since our last visit. Tonight, just kind of wanted to have a free flow conversation with somebody that I've kind of been paying attention to. It's kind of caught my eye philosophically. And without further ado, I wanted to go ahead and bring him on. You might know him by none other than T-Jump.
What am I doing here? How did you get me on this show? How did you just steal my stream? I was clearly just watching a TV show. What happened?
Well, I basically used some black hole technology, and through that wormhole, was able to pull you from your prior engagement, bring you here, and I'm gonna poke and prod you with a few questions, and hopefully the audience is game for that. How does that sound?
I guess if I'm compensated, just stealing that technology from John Oliver, where they can snap his fingers and make George Clooney appear,
Well, we might send you a little taste of this, just kind of depending on how you do. So we're going to go for high marks. No, but first and foremost, I am fanboying just a little bit, just a tiny bit. I have watched some of your debates, and I'm not going to lie. I'll be, on my couch. I'll stand up. I'll be foaming at the mouth, yelling, and you'll say exactly what I'm saying, and it's like, yes, can you fucking dunk? So I want to kind of get into that mentality of when you are getting into discourse with, let's say, a theist. How much preparation goes into it, and then B, are you aiming for kind of a reversal or a pivoting moment, or is it more for the audience who's taking part or who's watching the debate?
Yeah, so for regular people, I do 0 preparation. Modern day debate, -7 preparation.
-7.
Yeah, I like to just wake up and it's time to go. All right, fine. But yeah, so the only ones I do preparation on are the ones when I have professors on. Then I read their book or whatever. I've gotten a bunch of signed copies of their books that they send me. Those are the only ones I do actual preparation for. Everybody else, I just kind of just show up.
Preparation H.
Yep. I don't have any goals in the conversation. For me, it's more or less just looking at a argument on a piece of paper, and then here's my response to the argument, and then wait for the next response, and then just do that. So that's why it's easier for me to stay calm in a debate, because I don't see them as people. I just see them as arguments on a sheet of paper. And I'm all right, here's how I respond to that.
I like that response. You're separating the person from the argument, because I think I can do that, but I'm not consistent with that. Don't what the argument is. So.
Don't confuse me for being a good person who's trying to steal many arguments. I just don't see them as humans. That's the problem. I see them as a computer screen.
Yeah, and so if you had to cherry pick from the most contentious argument or debate that you've had, at least a recorded one anyway, how would you, for anyone else that's watching that might be doing a debate tomorrow or down the line, or maybe just wanting to get started in figuring out how to put their point across to somebody else that has a differing opinion, for the most contentious debate that you've ever had, do you feel that there was any ground gained with
Jay Dyer? No.
I wasn't going to say, but yeah. Would you mind walking through kind of, because it did get a little spicy. It did get a little fucking spicy.
Yeah. So Jay and me were yelling at each other the entire time. We didn't really make many arguments. All I did was he made an argument, then I read a philosophy paper that proved him wrong, and then we yelled some more, and that was kind of the whole argument, the whole debate.
So when it gets like that, you're basically kind of shifting out of your regular mantra, let's say, of these aren't humans, these are arguments on a computer screen, etc.
Well, actually, not really. So in those cases, the difference there is that instead of treating it like you're trying to progress the argument, then it becomes more of a talk show where you're trying to entertain the audience as much as possible. What can you do in this situation to make it fun and to get views and to get comments and donations. Well, then you just make it funny essentially. And so you change it from being some kind of an intellectual dialogue where you're actually trying to make progress in the structure of the argument to what can we do to make fun of this person as best as possible.
I think I like that. I'm gonna take a page from that book. The other thing I wanted to get into is if that is something that is probably easy for you to kind of get your ideas across, maybe even during a debate where somebody's yelling at you. I mean, literally. When you're speaking to, let's say, friends or loved ones who are right there in the room with you, when you get into a debate on, let's say, larger issues such as, something like morality or even just the concept of like violence, like if somebody, I don't know, spanks their kid and you're in the room or something like this, do you change any of your methods, or do you have any insight that you'd like to share with any of the audience on how to communicate with somebody physically in the room with you that you might have, I don't want to say a bias, but you might have a couple of factors, a couple of connectors with that person that you kind of want to argue with them, you want to change their mind about something, but you don't at the same time want to sacrifice the relationship with that person?
Jab, cross, punch, uppercut. But so in conversations with family, mostly with my parents, it's been the same for the most part. Pretty much the same kind of. They're not usually contentious. They're more like the regular just debates with Christians, because they pretty much are just regular Christians. With someone I'm dating, I take it a little bit easier. I try to soften it up a bit. Be like, yes, that's, even though you're kind of a socialist chick, it's all right. It's not totally bad, even though it's socialism, but all right. So, but other than that, my direct family, I treat essentially the same as I would in a debate.
Have you come across any type of topics, speaking on that, like with like your family or friends or anything, have you come across any topics that maybe you felt uncomfortable speaking about because of, I don't want to say the threat of, distancing yourself from them, but do you have any filter or holdback on certain topics? Like, I don't know, I'll throw something out like abortion, for example.
Not really. So because most of my past, I had like major depression, like suicidal depression. Talking about topics doesn't really even come close to the Richter scale of uncomfort for the stuff we've gone through in the relationship. So it's not really a big deal anymore.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to get to that point because, there are a couple of things that I want to like get into, but I want to be very careful in how I put the argument together because, I don't want to be by myself yelling I'm right and I've pushed everybody away, which is the opposite of what I wanted. I wanted the person to basically see my perspective and maybe contrast it with their own and hopefully come to the same conclusion. But I don't want to do it at the cost of eliminating all of my friends and family for the sake of me feeling like I'm correct. Do you ever feel? I mean, so that's what I'm getting at. Like, do you ever feel yourself pulling away from an argument because, as vindicated as you feel, or as as righteous as you feel with the point that you're making, at the same time you don't want that person to have negative emotions towards you or feelings towards you?
Yeah, not really. So, like I said, because we've gone through so much regarding my depression, my like direct parents and family are kind of happy that I'm not suicidal anymore, and so having contentions about politics really isn't a big concern for them, even though we definitely disagree on a lot of politics. So I definitely, and I'm also pretty easy to talk to with. Like we don't do screaming matches as much because I'm pretty good at debates for the most part. Yeah. So it's mostly just regular conversations about evidence and what qualifies as evidence, and it goes to anything. There's not really any topic we don't talk about for the most part.
That's really good. That is really good. I'm probably like 80% the way there. So I think certain things for me anyway, personally, it's hard to break that barrier without coming across like an asshole, basically. And I kind of want to get into.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. I totally understand that, and I've never really thought about it like that before. But I realized that because of how traumatic my past was that made it a lot easier to have these kinds of conversations with my parents, where other people it wouldn't, because these would be like harsh conversations to have with people because it is so close to their identity and their sense of self. But because of how
Yes.
traumatic my past was, my parents, that the comfort level for trauma had already gone so far beyond that this was actually, those kinds of conversations about abortion or religion or politics are so mundane by comparison that it makes it a lot easier for me to have those with my parents than it would for most people, I would imagine.
Like I've known somebody whose child passed away, and they were, I won't say their name on here, obviously, but they're very religious, and they would like to. I don't want to misquote them, but they would like to talk about their child basically being in heaven, or jumping in rain puddles, and things like that. That type of talk, and they know that I'm an atheist, and and I don't believe in that, but they would want me to contribute to the conversation. Like I could feel that they were in a moment of pain or a moment of reminiscence, and I'm conflicted with saying, well, there's no evidence for that, this, that, and the third, and go and just drill down into let this go right at that moment when they basically want a hug, really, or some kind of reinforcement of whatever's making them keeping them afloat. And on the other hand, I'm kind of like, well, if I do that, am I being disingenuous? Am I kind of just patronizing, this person?
Yeah, that's totally a legitimate concern. I can totally understand that, and I've gone through very similar things. What I do would be like to reassure them. What I would say is something like, well, yeah, afterlife is possible, whether there's a God or not. I mean, because it totally is. Like, even if there is no God, there could still be an afterlife. And so it's definitely possible to have that regardless of which worldview you hold. And so I usually take that more optimistic approach of saying that we don't know everything, regardless of whether or not God exists or not. And so it's possible to see loved ones after you die, even if there isn't a God.
Just maybe not in the context that they're thinking, but that this is still basically like a possibility. And that's kind of the mode that I went into, was that, well, who really knows? The not to give too much information, but the child was sick and passed away. And and I can kind of see where something like a religion will kind of be able to say, everybody calm down, we got this. It's kind of an easy in for the religion to kind of push me to the outside and give her that additional comfort, or that purpose, or that it's all meant to work out in this way because such and such. And it happens often enough to where I started wanting to get into like worldview calibration with other people. And in that journey, it's kind of like taking into consideration, as you said a little bit, the person and what they hold value in. And I don't know if you agree, but I come from the position of that we arbitrarily assign value to things, such as, I have a 6-year-old daughter. My friends haven't been calling me to ask me, how is your daughter doing? Did she eat today? Or anything like that, right? And it's not to talk shit about my friends. It's just that we assign certain percentages of value to different things, in my opinion. And if that is the case, if we arbitrarily assign value to things, I feel like we should be able to, if I'm correct, we should be able to reevaluate and purpose the percentages of value that we're doling out. So what I mean to say is, if she's putting value into heaven, for example, because that's going to be some safety for her child that's passed away, or some type of ultimate outcome for the child, right, where they don't experience pain or sickness or whatever it is. I'm trying to communicate with that person and get them to make it their own idea, to lessen the value and maybe place it in just elsewhere.
I don't know.
Whether that's nostalgia or.
I'd probably disagree with that. So I'd say that,
okay,
like, I value happiness more than truth. So I think that if you're made happy by believing that, or it gives you comfort, then it's more important than whether or not it's true. If you could actually prove for a fact it wasn't the case, you shouldn't do it. I think that probably one of the biggest benefits that religion has given to society is giving them hope and comfort when there isn't any. So I think that it's more important that if you can, to believe things that make you happy, regardless of the truth. And you shouldn't like reassess your values, or shouldn't be forced to reassess your values unless there's some kind of negative consequence to your belief, like your belief that
Okay.
drinking or something. I believe drinking will get me into heaven. Like, no, we should reassess those values. But as long as it doesn't do anything damaging, then their belief, as long as it's comforting to them, is something that they should be able to hold on to forever, essentially. So I think that in cases like that, it's perfectly fine to believe what makes you happy. And it would only be the case that, like, if she genuinely wanted to understand truth and was like, I really want to know if there's an afterlife or not, and I really want to know if there's evidence, then it would be appropriate to be like, okay, here's the evidence, here's where your basis for trying to reassess what you think is true. But if that's not like a goal or something she actually would ask for, I'd say just let her believe what makes her feel happy, because that's far more important than knowing truth.
Right. I mean, I would typically say, yeah, a benign belief like believing marshmallows, or the clouds are made out of marshmallows or something like that. I'm not going to, freak out about that. Right. That's not a big deal. But what I'm getting at is, with the religion, it comes with other ideas, right, as well. So I didn't mean to get too deep into this, but yeah, I mean, she is believing in that part of it, and then because that is such a heavy factor for her, it makes it easier for her to take on the other bits, and those may or may not be harmful. So for me, I think that if the major anchor was to be let go of, it would kind of like a domino effect allow her to let go of the rest of it. But how do you even have that conversation without belittling the person or diminishing as you said, what makes them happy? So it's like,
oh yeah, for sure, that's totally a legitimate concern. But I'd say that's the opposite way to go about it. I'd say that the way to change people's minds is you take away the little things first. You take away the things that are like, that's kind of a meh. Like, all right, fine, I can grant that's not really a big deal. And if you take away enough of those, then the big thing becomes easier. The core of the reason they believe is easier to change. That's why when we see people leaving religion, it's not because of the big things. It's because they lose the little things, like, oh, wait a minute, so evolution explains the diversity of life? Like, all right, I mean, that's not really why I believe, but okay. And so I guess that's not a God thing. And oh wait, the world wasn't created in 7 days, no Adam and Eve. Like, oh, that's not, I mean, I didn't really believe because of those things, but it's okay. I guess they're not technically true. And then as you chip away at the small things that don't really matter, then it becomes easier to loosen the grip on the big things. So I'd say that doing it the other way around is extremely painful emotionally, to try and force them to give up the most important things while they still have all these other connections going on. But yeah, from my position, my goal has never been to change people's minds. I think people should believe what they want to believe. And I don't think religion as a whole is very harmful for people just to be religious. I think in certain political instances it can be harmful, and we should fix the politics issue. But I think that for the most part, religion is good, and if people want to believe in God, they're totally fine in doing that, as long as they don't claim that they actually have evidence.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm not out to rid them, of the world of religion or anything like that. This particular person is, kind of how should I say, enamored with the idea of heaven, and kind of really trying to do everything that the book says to get to that place, to meet up with their child and things of that nature. So that's kind of where I kind of see some concern, where if it says, TJump is in, I don't know, TJump is under the waterfall. He's drinking a coconut drink under the waterfall, and we want to go hang out with TJump. And it's like, well, damn, I really want to get over there and get one of those fucking coconut drinks. It's like, well, the book says I have to, take a shit, and then eat it, and then I can get over there and hang out with TJump. And it's like, well, hold on. I don't want to fuck up what's making you happy. You want to go hang out with TJump under the waterfall and get that coconut drink. But there's shit involved, and you're trying to eat it. And I want to talk about that. And so I don't know. That's kind of where I'm looking at certain things. And it's like, I don't want to take it away from them, but I want to have the conversation as to why wouldn't you just be able to go to the waterfall without eating the shit, for example?
Yeah.
How far am I going to take this? I don't know.
Yeah. So,
But
so those kinds of conversations, I think the best thing to do is to take a more moderate interpretation of, like, if we're talking about like Christianity or something, and they're a Bethlehem Baptist Christian who thinks being gay is evil or something, and then you can start moving more towards the more Protestant views, the non-Baptist views, and show, oh, look, this is how these people interpret it. And if you make the small steps that are just
like that.
as close to possible with the least difference, but still kind of fit enough into their world for them to be like, you know what, that kind of makes sense, that could work. And if you make enough of those small steps, that's when it starts to, you can get rid of those bad habits of the extremist interpretations. So I think it's better to just, to, instead of taking the atheist viewpoint, take alternative Christian viewpoints of more moderate views.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to kind of get into is, now I know a lot of people have been talking about the whole situation with like Texas, and not to switch it up, we're kind of moving into like a little bit of a political conversation, but we don't have to stay there for too long. But everything kind of going on right now with Texas and the change of the abortion law. I've even heard some comments saying that the CDC is not listing abortion as causes of death, right? And trying to point fingers and saying that this has been politicized in some way where it should be listed or something like that. I don't know if you have commented on the topic of abortion, but if you have, just, humor me here. Would you be under the impression that abortion should be listed as a cause of death by the CDC, among many other, obviously, causes of death?
Maybe. I mean, I guess technically it is. I think that, I mean, I'm pro-choice, so I would say that I grant that killing anything which is conscious is wrong. And so once the baby is conscious, it is, you're killing it, and it's technically murder in a sense. But because it's inside of another human being, it's self-defense. So you're just killing someone in self-defense because they're inside of a different human being's body. And so in that case, even if you did list it on the CDC as a cause of death, which technically it could be, it would still be like a self-defense kind of cause of death. Like if someone was attacking you and you shot them in self-defense, yeah, you'd be killing them, but it's justified because you're protecting your own body. And based on the legal definition of self-defense and the use of lethal force, there's like 4 criterion of great bodily harm and serious bodily injury of what qualifies as those. One of them is like permanent or lasting deformations, which pregnancy does that. Risk of serious bodily harm, pregnancy does that. Long-term effects, pregnancy does that, like 9 months of long-term
postpartum
physical. Yep. Postpartum depression is a thing that happens. So yes, depression meets all of the criterion for using lethal force in self-defense. And so even if you wanted to list abortion as a kind of killing or death of the infant, it would still qualify as self-defense. And so it should still be pro-choice, not pro-life.
Yeah, I'm definitely pro-choice. I really like I didn't want to overreact when you said it, but I was kind of cheering silently when you said the self-defense aspect. I've actually gotten into that before. I obviously would agree with that. That kind of puts it in if somebody were to say, well, because at first when you said consciousness would make it contingent on whether or not it should be listed as a cause of death, etc., or if it's murder, let's say, or whatever. I was going to follow up with, well, at what point do you consider the consciousness to initiate? But once you use the terminology self-defense, it really wouldn't be a factor at that point. It's full circle. If we arbitrarily assign value to ourselves, right, we would need to act on that valuation that we've made. So self-defense would be the priority at all times, regardless of what stage in the pregnancy that the baby is in. So I fucking agree with you, bro. I mean, I'm actually a little surprised that you said that. I was like, because you were kind of going like this a little bit at first, and then with the self-defense was just like, fuck yeah.
Well, yeah. So to comment more on that, like Because of my morality, I think killing anything with conscience is immoral. And so if once a baby becomes conscious, then it's alive and it is a person technically. And so killing it is technically immoral, but
Mhm.
it's justified like self-defense is. Just like killing, I say killing someone who's attacking you is also immoral because you've killed someone. I think killing under any circumstances is always going to be immoral based on my morality. But in some cases, it's justified. It's the least immoral thing you could do to protect yourself, essentially. And that's kind of how I would see abortion is that, yeah, I think the Republicans are right. Yes, you are killing babies. That is a thing. But the Democrats are right because it is the woman's body and it's in self-defense. So I think that both of those should be accepted and legitimized as being true arguments, but we should acknowledge that a human life doesn't have um, the legitimacy to override another human life, and that there are justified cases where you can end one person's life to protect another.
And why do you think, just if we're going to put on our, I assume you're not a Republican. I pay the compliment of assuming.
Burn.
I pay you the compliment of assuming that you're not a Republican. But if we are going to put those hats on, and we're Republicans, and we're saying, this is murder, 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 death, kill, are we going to then ask why isn't violence of any sort condemned from that political view? Because obviously the pregnancy process and the whole concept of abortion is very nuanced. There is a lot of there are a lot of factors to consider. I mean, just straight away. But it seems like they're in the mindset that this is a type of violence. And I use that word very specifically. Why do you think that they would hone in on abortion and not, I don't know, spanking children, for example?
Because they're not as morally consistent as I am. So in my view, yeah, I understand it as I understand that clearly killing someone is wrong. Any kind of violence is wrong. So killing in self-defense is wrong. So I make that connection. But Republicans only see it as, well, it's not the baby's fault, it's the mother's fault. You had sex without the correct contraceptions or whatever, and therefore you're to blame, which is just wrong. That's not how biology works. And so they have this archaic view based on their religious beliefs that you hold responsibility because of how biology designed you, and you're subservient to biology and must adhere to its rules, and you're not allowed to do what you want with your body because biology will put this other person in you without your consent. And so they have all those other religious connotations to their justification, but that doesn't mean that their argument that babies are people is wrong. I mean, they are. If they're conscious, it's alive, and you are killing it. That part, they got that part right, even if all of their all ridiculous religious justifications are all wrong.
That's because that is interesting, because you're upset that somebody had an abortion but had that baby. I'm just saying, statistically speaking, okay, if the baby was to be born to a Republican family who is religious, there is a high likelihood, or I should say a positive correlation, with spanking. And I look at that like a type of violence. Like, I don't spank my child, and I'm thinking about that all the time now, especially now with this abortion thing happening in Texas. And I'm thinking, well, you have your priorities on harm to the child, but based on the evidence, I mean, the type of family that that child would have lived or grew up in, you would have been subjugated. You would have been experiencing violence, constantly spanking. So which would be the worst of the two in the Republicans' eye? That the child wasn't born after the coming to term, or to exist in a household where they're spanked on a regular basis based on mistakes and quote unquote poor behavior as deemed by the parents.
Well, I would imagine Republicans would see death as far worse than spanking, but a more compelling argument, I would say, is that one, the Republicans want you to not have an abortion, but they don't want to take care of the kids, and they're all in foster homes, and they're not going to adopt after having the abortion. So they care about the kid up until the point it's out of the mother, and then they don't care about the kid anymore. And another one
There it is. There it is.
Well, another one is that because Christians are mostly, or Republicans are mostly Christian, if the baby is aborted, it has a 100% chance of going to heaven. But if it becomes a kid, it has a chance of becoming an atheist and then going to hell. So based on Christian logic, it may be safer to have the abortion.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, T-Jumps, another gem dropped tonight. I really fucking appreciate your time, man. You've been very cool, calm, and collected, and I appreciate you swimming through all of the randomness that we went through tonight. For the audience, if anyone was triggered by any of the things that we discussed, we do like to get into these types of topics, maybe a little bit more deeply than others. Sometimes this was another instance of that, but T-Jump, definitely appreciate you on here. As I said, would like to maybe have you on again in the future.
Sure.
Would you be interested in sticking around in case anybody was wanting to poke and prod you themselves back in our Discord, or do you have any prior engagements?
I could probably stick around for 10, 15 minutes.
10, 15 minutes, come get some. T-Jump said it himself. Everybody, be prepared. Next Friday is going to be the first Friday of the month. Obviously, we're going to have another episode of Tiger Talk. It's going to be another 30-minute show. I'm going to have some special guests on, probably one or two. You may have recognized one of them from the previous episode that I did with Edward Gonzalez. He's going to be joining us, and then we're also going to have Inquisitive Quandary, also known by Josh. He's going to come on as well, and we'll kind of have a few different topics that we're going to jump into. But other than that, T-Jump, I'm sure you want to take a break, and then we'll jump into the Discord maybe, 20 minutes from now, 15 minutes? How are you feeling?
Well, I was going to do it like right now.
Right the fuck now. Let's go ahead and do it. All right, take care. It's signing off, and appreciate everybody in the background making the show happen.
Cool. Thanks.